What's up, Gestalt Education Nation? Today's episode is brought to you by The Payday Practice and our good friends Jeff Langmaid and Jason Deach.
So how would Seth Godin, Gary Vee, and Tim Ferriss create a chiropractic practice? The answer is in this book right here. So our good friends Jeff Langmaid and Jason Deach, they created the Payday Practice to basically show you how you cover your monthly expenses in one day every month. Guaranteed. Generating monthly recurring revenue in your practice can create financial freedom, eliminate chronic financial stress, and turn the first day of each month from damn, it's time to start over to payday.
Get a free copy today at www.thepaydaypractice.com. The Payday Practice will show you the exact step-by-step process that you can use to generate monthly recurring revenue in your practice. Get your free copy today at www.thepaydaypractice.com.
All right, everyone. Welcome to another episode of the Gestalt Education Show. Brett, we're back in Troy, back on the home turf. We got some new faces today. So today is a day about manipulation. And so part of manipulation, part of our every one of our stories is the Motion Palpation Institute. And so we're going to kind of get into there and talk about the adjustathon, some other things like that. But then I want you to riff on manipulation too. And I know that that's been a crusade of yours. It's a crusade of mine. It's a crusade of all of us, honestly. You know, we always say in a world where people are a little bit ashamed to call themselves chiropractors, we want to be the people that are actually calling ourselves chiropractors.
Yeah, we're not.
We're not ashamed of that. And so anyway, I got to introduce all my friends. We basically have four generations of Motion Palpation Institute reps: Nate Scarry, Pete Roy, Brett Winchester, Taylor Kramer. So Nate, let's start with you, bro. How did you end up here as an intern here at Winchester Spine Sport?
Yeah, so I started in trimester 1 in chiro school. I went to Northwestern Health and Sciences in Minnesota, and I right away in Tri 1 I went to the Motion Palpation Club, and then luckily enough is when I was in trimester 5 I got my first seminar in after COVID kind of winded down a little bit. And then, lucky enough to take a seminar from you guys actually at Palmer and met PD and all them.
There you go.
And then led my way to DNS, and then kind of kept taking motion palpation classes from you guys and ended up here as an intern. So
it's amazing.
Yeah.
PD?
Yeah, my story.
So Pete's one of our newest associates here, one of our newest doctors, and so we're pumped to have him here.
Coming up on a year, but Brett thinks it's only been 4 months. So. My story is going to be similar, obviously, but I remember my first seminar. I don't think I've ever told you guys this story, but adjustathon. It was probably second or third try. I'm sitting in the corner, and they got all the instructors up on the stage. I think Brett's in the corner behind me, and they're introducing everyone like movie stars, announcing their name. They're coming out. And I'm sitting in the corner back. Brett's behind me. They go, Brett Winchester. He comes up. He's got his high waters similar to how I wear them. Ankle tattoos showing. I'm like, okay, who's this guy? This guy's full of himself. You guys haven't heard this yet. But he goes up. I'm kind of naysaying him already. But by the end of the weekend, I was hooked and I was in. So led me here, led me to be an intern, and led me to stay in Troy, Missouri. So.
Love it. Yeah, it's beautiful. So, the Motion Palpation Institute has a special part in all of our worlds. But for me, I was a rep at Cleveland and Kansas City. That's how I met Brett. I took a DNS course with him and Elena. I don't know. It was in Fit Muscle Joint in Kansas City. And it was
really cool.
Oh my God. That, yeah. It was free. I remember we were all bundled up in like our winter clothes, so it was insane. But anyway, so the reason we're talking here is there's a huge we call it the Super Bowl of adjusting. So that means the MPI Adjustathon. And so not only is it kind of a plug for that because it's my favorite seminar. I know it's your favorite every single year to be there and stuff like that. But Brett, what's the traditional chiropractor like us, people that want to introduce manipulation, rehab, soft tissue, all these things together? Where does manipulation really shine in this kind of triage that we talk about all the time?
I think, especially the last 10 years, as far as like what we've learned from the neurophysiologic effects with an adjustment, I mean, we have learned so much about what a powerful tool it is. But what's been kind of interesting in our field is we've had, a certain group of people that have basically And I mean, honestly, sometimes it ends up being more of the evidence-based group, which we're in that camp. So this is not a knock on them, but it's kind of, it's almost like people have been on a crusade to try to disprove what an adjustment does. It's like this weird irony. And I just think, and I mean, the criteria for us at MPI is if we can find a joint that's not moving well and we can find the plane of motion that's not moving in and we can find a way to remedy that joint blockage, like you can expect great things to happen. So, and we all say it around here, it's like no one's better off for, moving around on earth with joints that are blocked from a neurologic reason, from a biomechanical reason. And I think what you're going to find over the next, at least in my lifetime and your guys' lifetime, you're going to continue to see research basically support what we're doing. What's been hard is when we do double-blind controlled studies is we just look at like a wide range of low back pain, and then when maybe it does or maybe it doesn't give us the effect that we want, and I think maybe sometimes when we're looking at research that way for manipulation, it's not basically exposing how powerful this tool is, because really, every patient that you see in a day potentially could require an adjustment, just depending on, the case that we're seeing. So I think, through, research that's gone before us that has tried to like classify so neatly, like, we have this group that needs to be adjusted, this group that needs to be stabilized, this group requires traction, this group requires, directional preference. It's not always that easy, as the four of us would attest to. It's always about kind of mixing and matching. So I think the mistake has been to think that in isolation, that manipulation is the only tool that you need. However, man, it can be the hammer in your toolbox, but you also want to be sure that you're, applying all the other, things that we always talk about, whether it's rehab, soft tissue, lifestyle change, changing diet, functional medicine. So, will it stand on its own as far as the research goes? Actually, we found out it actually does do that. But I think to get the world-class result that we all want, it's just a multimodal approach, and it's one of the big ones that we use.
You have a slide in most of the presentations that you talk about with manipulation that manipulation is for stiff joints. Stabilization is for loose joints or moving too much, and then education is for all. That's Stanley Paris.
Stanley Paris, yeah.
So we kind of had a conversation today in Grand Rounds, Brett, of like, is it just for stiff joints? This is a thing that we've kind of been struggling with ourselves, and we talked to Don Dishman, we talked to David Seaman about these types of things, about the neurophysiological effects of this fast twitch in the muscles and that kind of stuff. But where are you at, kind of in your brain with wrestling with that right now?
Yeah, I think it's hard because when we do an adjustment, it has been proven without a shadow of a doubt. We've learned this from Walter Herzog's research from the University of Calgary, that when you and I adjust a joint, we are getting softening of soft tissues, not only at the side of the adjustment, but also in the periphery. So then you get to this almost conundrum of, would you still impulse or thrust on a joint even if the joint was moving well, in an attempt to get normalization of tension and tone in the soft tissues? So I've probably thought longer and harder about this thought than maybe anybody, but and honestly, Lynn, we've talked to Lynn about this. Lynn and Dr. Carrick from the
Carrick Institute.
The Carrick Institute, they're in cahoots and they're tight. So they've definitely had some conversations also. But I would say at this point, the functional neurology people they may argue differently, which is perfectly fine. I'm not saying we by any means have it all figured out. But I would say at this point, I am more likely to be only thrusting on things that are not moving well. And I also say that because the worst things, the most catastrophic things that happens to our patients when we adjust them happen when people don't know how to palpate or joint play well, and they end up adjusting a joint that's already moving too well. And we see that with basically the people who unfortunately have stroked out with manipulation, and those are always the same demographic of people. We have young, hypermobile females that are the age of these two here, and they almost always, if you look hard enough, would have a positive Baton criteria and have like clinical hypermobility. So basically, they got an adjustment that day that they didn't need. Therefore, it kind of led to their problem. And I know a lot of people are arguing right now about strokes causing chiropractors, or causing strokes. But I would just say that I think I'll go to my grave saying, like, if you do a good job at palpating, I think that is like the best way besides the history to buffer you against something, catastrophic that could potentially happen with an adjustment.
So that takes us into palpation. I mean, we've talked about palpation in ad nauseum on this podcast, but then give us the most recent thoughts on palpation, why that is your number one tool leading to manipulation or telling you where to manipulate and that kind of stuff.
Well, I mean, a couple things. I think like a lot of people have a misinterpretation, especially like our reps, like they think that MPI is just seated cervicals, and like there's just like a big misconception about what MPI actually is. But what MPI is actually, if we really kind of broke it down, is finding joint plays that basically match every single adjustment that you know. Now in MPI, we have adjustments that we like because we think they're easier on the doctor, et cetera. But at the end of the day, especially as I've gotten older, like I'm not even that much of a snob at this point. I truly believe that everyone that attends one of our seminars should be able to do any adjustment that literally exists out there. States Manual, Gonstead, Diversified, it doesn't matter. If you're a superstar, you can just change your contact and you can make any one of those literally 5,000 adjustments that are out there happen. But the key point is, and this is where people aren't good at, you have to be able to palpate to determine which one of those 5,000 adjustments makes the most sense for that. And that's been a huge problem, because the hardest thing to learn how to do is to learn how to joint play well, which brings me to my next point, which was one of your points of your question, which is how do we get better at it? Taking the joint to end range in the plane of motion that you're checking for, and then from there springing I think that is the best advice I can give. If you look at Greg Kowalczyk and others' research on palpation, you will see that even when the people are not trained very well, they actually are relatively good at being able to find major joint blockages in the body. Now, as you get better and better at palpation, you learn the ability to start to be able to feel nuances with joint blockage, meaning even if you're a complete stooge, you can still put your hands on someone's back and say, okay, this joint's not moving well. As you get better and better at this and you get more reps, then you can start to pick out the little nuances of joint blockage. But I think the key to being able to feel that is getting all the motion taken out, and from that point springing. And then I think it is, oh my gosh, when I learned that from a teaching standpoint, just immediately changed my career.
What about pain provocation as an opportunity?
If you look at Laslet's criteria, that's one area where there is some evidence to support that if you provoke a joint, that tells us that joint is probably the pain generator, but does not tell us
what to adjust.
Yeah, whether or not you need to adjust or not, So, and even Mark Laslet is on a podcast saying that his cluster of tests was really good at pulling out like the hypermobile, postpartum female who's got loose joints and things like that. So saying that, if we get on a postpartum female who's got a loose SI joint and we spring it and they say, ow, that tells us that, potentially that is their pain generator. Not always, but potentially. But it might mean that joint is moving too much. So I think we need to walk away from pain provocation. I'll tell you another reason why on that. I'm not going to say it doesn't matter. It means something, of course. But the stiffest joints that we're all going to feel, like take our geriatric patients that you guys see here. You put their hands on their thoracic spine. They don't have any pain there. They have pain everywhere else. But the one area that they need even a little bit of movement in is that area. And then so what you got to do then is, like, if you go for broke on an 80-year-old who's never been to a chiropractor, you're going to break 10 ribs on them, So you got to start small. And that's what we do. I think we do a pretty good job here of like slowly starting to impart motion in, because a little bit goes a long way. And it may happen too. We never get 100% good joint play, but if we get a little bit back, it can change the quality of their life. And that's how I look at it. And I look at like if someone's on a treatment plan, basically joint play is one of the things. It's a serial set of events where the patient should be getting better and better from a joint play standpoint. Like it's still going to palpate stiff on that 80-year-old the next time you see him, but we're slowly but surely, I always use the analogy of like loosening the top on a jar of pickles. Like finally you do enough to finally loosen it up. And that is one thing that I've learned. Like that patient who you're not cavitating, eventually you start to be able to actually get the joint to release over time. But if you went for it on the first time, you would literally hurt them.
Mm-hmm. We had an early podcast on liberating yourself from the cavitation too, and so I think that's another thing that we're constantly educating our patients on is that it's all about movement. It's all about movement. It's all about movement.
Right.
I mean, Pete, I'll direct it to you. You're a year in practice now. I mean, manipulating these stiff, we call them these stiff old buzzards in here is a little bit different than manipulating patients in the student clinic and your fellow interns. And stuff.
Totally different. I mean, going back to cavitation, people always ask, that one didn't pop, that one didn't go, blah, blah, blah. And to go back to Brett's point, it's the change over time. So maybe the pop doesn't matter the first day, but if it happens the 6th, 7th visit, well, shoot, now we're changing that joint. We're making some good change. But yeah, heck of a lot different than practicing in apartments and getting together with other MPI reps. But I mean, that's the beauty of MPI too. It's that the growth mentality. People want to get together. People want to practice. Everybody's looking to get better than the next, and it leads to pretty dang good results.
If you literally kind of mind F yourself the next time you're with patients for a day and just say, okay, today I'm going to completely just unplug myself from any joint noise. All I'm going to do is I'm going to do a really good job. I'm not going to let them bully me into doing an adjustment they don't need. I'm just going to do that. That is the mindset. I think it's like a healthy way to think for a lot of people early on. And then the patients too, they need to be educated on that, because if they're in their mind, if they think success in a treatment is only hearing joint noise, then the second you don't get it, then they all of a sudden think that they're, either you're not good at what you're doing, or that, you've done a disservice to them, or, it wasn't a good treatment. When the sad reality is a lot of times the joints, once they're starting to moving well, they don't cavitate like they did before. So ironically, when they're looking at you like, hey, why didn't you get my back to go today? Ironically, they're actually better because the joints have been able to kind of keep their range of motion, and that can be a good sign. But if your patients are, wanting or yearning for that cavitation, which a lot of our patients are, and by all means, I'm not saying we're not. It's not like we're not getting cavitations around here, but I'm just saying that I think it's a really healthy to just think of what we're doing is not creating popping in joints. We're just imparting motion.
That's right.
Lin Fei is actually the best at this. Lin Fei will put the patient back up, joint play it again, and say, nope, I still didn't get it. Just doesn't even care about the cavitation. And then we'll go back and maybe do another adjustment just to continue to, be meticulous about the different planes of motion.
If you go back and watch our video of him actually adjusting you, it's way back in our YouTube. But I mean, he is so meticulous on that exact point. And I just think I agree. It's so healthy, especially as a growing clinician. I'm sure you would agree, Pete, of the more and more patients you see in the day, if you're worried about the pain coming in, and I know we've talked about this too, but if you're worried about their pain, it's just a long, drawn-out day for you. But if you can show them that their joints are changing, you can show them range of motion changes, those little things like that, then now you're getting a little excited, because that they're getting better slowly but surely. It's just a matter of time before they start to feel it as well.
But even if you're a pure DNS practitioner, 100%, that's the only thing you're using, joint play is still a great audit in that world, because as we get better and better at DNS, then you're going to start to be able to use the joint system as a way to knowing that patient's also better as an audit, because sometimes people get a little bit frustrated with going back to the DNS assessment and test, which we do that a lot, but then you can also use soft tissues, but you can also use joint play to let us make sure that know that we're on the right track.
Okay, let's switch gears a little bit. I'm going to go over here to Nate. So we've had a couple of our past interns up here. Pete, you're a past intern, obviously. What's been the most surprising thing maybe on joint play, on manipulation that you've seen, or some of the things that you've kind of taken away from the last couple months being here?
Yeah, I'd say the biggest thing for me is in school, you're palpating healthy, 24, 25-year-olds all day. And sometimes it's hard to find a true joint restriction. And then coming here when you're palpating people, that haven't moved in 30 years and like the primary joint restrictions just jump out like Brett said, like crazy to you. So that's been probably the biggest thing to me is like in school, you can get really frustrated with like, I don't know what I'm feeling here. I can't feel nothing. And then when you get here, like they jump out, so well at you. And then it matches right to your MDT and DNS stuff, like everything. If you can palpate well, everything gets a lot easier that way. So yeah, that's been really sweet.
And it basically, it blew my mind coming here using joint play as your audit visit to visit, not only pre and post, manipulation, but visit to visit. That was, a new concept that we never thought of, or we never talked about it in school at all. But that's how you're making those functional changes, and that's an audit in itself. That's not just a standalone thing.
What's hard for the students is when if you teach a seminar, let's say there's 50 people there, you would be lucky to find one person in that room who actually needs an upper cervical adjustment. I'm talking like you would need to be lucky.
Yep.
And but I think as a student, that's why it's so hard to learn, because as a student, you're not feeling what true joint blockage feels like. So then you're like looking for these nuances. And honestly, in the student population, when they do feel something, it's almost always like a soft tissue restriction. And then they're hammering away and they're not getting the joint to release the way that they want. In the joint, when you come up behind them, you're like, this joint is moving perfectly. And they're so blown away by that. But what they're actually feeling is soft tissue tightness that's basically kind of faking them out. Mm-hmm. And of course, we teach at MPI, one of the ways to get around that is to take the patient off weight bearing, and then that way, you can feel better what the joints are doing. It's
beautiful.
An easier way.
I love it. So, Brett, maybe just give us one last CRE for why manipulation is not going anywhere, number one, and then number two, why continuing to think and to continuing to audit yourself with your hands is so important with getting better at palpation manipulation.
Well, I think like if we just look at the timeline of, you've seen the slide that I present on a lot where we look at like when the first adjustments were occurring, way back when ancient, the ancient Chinese were utilizing manipulation, and then we have drawings in caves in France. We're talking thousands of years before Christ. So this is, people have been laying their hands on other humans in an attempt to try to get them better literally since the beginning of time. So, and it has really stood the test of time. The profession, let's call it, over 120 years old or around there. So everybody thinks of like this being, such a young thing, but the reality of it is we've been doing this forever. So, and the other thing too, with the AMA and others that were really trying to shut chiropractic down, basically it was too powerful basically for it to be shut down. So I think that tells me that it's going to stand the test of time. And then I've been at this long enough too to see the miracles even with that modality in itself when performed well and when performed right. I think it ain't going anywhere.
That's right.
And then at the end of the day, it's a skill no different than throwing a cornhole bag too soon, shooting a basketball, swinging a golf club. It is so easy for the present day human being in the world that we live in to say, oh, I've been to a seminar before, or I've already seen that, or this is too hard. When really, the people that are good at it, they will tell you, it is a bloody, bloody journey to get good at this. Lots of failure, lot of missing an adjustment, then going back to the palpation and being like, okay, I missed this. And you almost just have to revel in how hard it is to be good at this. And most people who are good at it, they'll tell you what I'm about to tell you, which is, the psychomotor skill of adjusting is not the hardest part. The hardest part is actually palpation. So in no other world do you have to be really good at two different things. I use the baseball analogy of how often, with the exception of Ohtani, do we see somebody who's a great pitcher and a great hitter, So in our world, in manipulation, you've got to be really good at your ability to feel, but then you also need to be good at your ability to generate force and to be able to remedy those joint blockages that you're feeling.
And going back to this morning's meeting, Grand Rounds, we talked about just the pure healing power of the hands. I mean, if we had a robot that did the exact same thrust as any of us did here, sure, they'd get the joint moving, but just the pure healing power that patient's experience and what the human hand can do, I mean, that's can't be replaced.
Yeah, with artificial intelligence and other things and the advent of all this new technology. But at the end of the day, my guess would be, at least in our lifetimes, there will never be a device that's going to be able to take into account the history that's been built into your hands to feel. Meaning, like Carol Levitt said, my best treatment would be my last treatment. And what he meant by that is he's got 70 years of experience built into his hands at that point. So even though he may not be as good at his manual therapy at that point in his career, he's got all those years of feeling and feeling and feeling and feeling. And that's why I think like students also make a mistake. Like, you don't go to MPI Club just to do an adjustment that day. You go to MPI Club to be able to palpate 30 different people, because the more people you actually palpate, then the better you will be at pattern recognition, which is the name of the game of being a great clinician.
That's right. I agree. And if you're a student out there listening, go to all clubs. I mean, my goodness, like we were talking about, you should be good enough that you could roll into Gonstead tomorrow and destroy everybody in that, because you've done such a good job of learning with your hands and you understand joint blockage. And from there, I mean, it's just laying the hands on it and getting the joint to move a little bit.
Yeah, so. Absolutely. I mean, and there's some adjustments that, like at Palmer. So let's toggle in an atlas from a sideline position. There is, there's a person out there that would benefit drastically from that adjustment. If they're lacking lateral flexion in their upper cervical spine, that is a way to do it. Now, we have 6 other ways to do it, but that would be a way. And that's how you want to start thinking, because one thing I've learned is you never know, like as I've come through, injuries I've had with myself, is you may be in a knee brace or coming back from a surgery for 2 months. You may, have hurt your wrist playing volleyball. So like you have to like learn how to still be able to go to work every day and be able to pull off an adjustment. Or like another class example is you go to a training room and all they have is wooden tables that go up to here. And now you got to do a side posture adjustment. Well, you got to figure that one out. Like you have a table that's basically up to your mid chest and you're used to having, where you can body drop. Well, now you got to figure out how to move someone's low back that's 300 pounds and a lot bigger than you. And, but yeah, it's, that's why you want to learn how to do, or you're like you guys provide the sideline care for us. I mean, a lot of times you don't have a table on the sideline. You got to figure out a way to, blow someone's occiput up from a seated position or an A to P, even on the field, whatever it might be.
I've seen Taylor adjust on a bench at halftime when the player had full pads on, probably a mouth guard too. Yeah. That was probably one of the more impressive.
It was actually not a bench. It was the stairs that go, that kind of come off.
Oh yeah, concrete stairs.
It was amazing.
Knuckles are all bloody.
Oh
but,
my God.
Anytime, any place, I guess.
Yeah.
You just figure it out. I think that's the benefit again of being good with palpation though, because you can feel if the joint is at end range, and then from there it's just a little drop. You don't have to be anything special to do that. But once what becomes special is feeling that end range and feeling when the joint's there, and then from there, I mean.
Or knowing when it's not there.
Yeah.
Honestly, like so being able to palpate and be like, and I mean this is always you got a new patient, let's just say, and you joint play around, everything's moving well, you're just like, oh, because that's the easier tool, right? So once we have to start doing rehab and relying on the brain to be able to pick the right muscles in a synergistic way, like that is a little bit harder than like, banging a joint. And the other thing too that I think is interesting is when you are with your friends and your back is bothering you or your cervical spine's bothering you, a lot of times you don't go to your buddy, hey, can we do a 30-minute DNS session here to... Even though that may be a lot of times what would be needed, especially long term. But what do you say? You're like, hey man, can you? So then that's what we a lot of times do. But then we won't do that for our patients. I mean, that's kind of an interesting irony, So in a perfect world, we're able to integrate all the different things and modalities together in one. I mean, and that's the journey that all the great clinicians are on of like, basically you are looking at a puzzle and knowing where everything fits, and whoever does the best job of putting the puzzle together, is the best in my opinion, honestly. Like being able to integrate all these things together, not just necessarily knowing these things individually.
That's right. I mean, at the end of the day, Gestalt education, it's education and integration. Winchester Spinal Sport, where we're at right now, this is the playground for integration. I mean, that is what we do all day long. And the hope is that we continue to integrate better than everybody and to spread the knowledge then and to keep progressing. Because at the end of the day, like, I would hope to goodness in a year from now, all four of us are in a better place than we are now. And that's with manipulation and everything like that. And I hope for everybody that's listening right now, that's why you're listening, I would assume, is to try to get a little bit better. And so I hope these stories have kind of helped motivate you, number one, and then kind of educate you on, we don't need to throw the baby out the bathwater with manipulation. Get good with your hands, figure out where these patients need to be manipulated, and provide the service that they need. Because if you can't do that, I've heard you say this a million times, Brett, if you can't deliver that service, they'll find somebody that can.
Right.
And so be good with your hands, damn it.
Yeah, no, I agree. And there's a reason why, a lot of different disciplines are kind of, clamoring to be able to do adjusting, whether that's ATC, PT, chiro, people understand the power of it. So that in itself says something, I think.
Let's not throw it away. Yeah.
That's right. Absolutely. Well, thank you both for being here. Your inaugural podcast, I think, maybe. So nice. We're happy. I've been ecstatic with Pete joining the crew. I mean, he's been awesome, and then Nate is just an absolute stud of an intern. We have some great ones right now, Brett, and so. I feel proud of our intern program. I know you do too. It's come a long ways, and the ones before you've kind of paved the way. And so we're building something special here at Winchester Spine Sport with the intern program. I mean, the lineage that you have that's kind of come through here is pretty special. I mean, it is really special. Everyone from Rich Holm, Bo Beard,
Jason Holm, Tyler Ideas.
Yeah, it is. It's
we're
special.
missing a bunch, but it's been awesome.
Yeah, so we're happy you guys are here. Number one, Nate, you're going to go on to do great things. And then if we could add a plea, I mean, go to an NPI seminar. I just think like there's a stigma that it's for students, number one, that doctors feel out of place. That's no longer the case.
No, the format's changing now where you can host it just like you would any other course. So, I think that's going to be great. And actually the students will probably be left out of those courses. And then the first week in October, it's a little bit confusing because usually we always do the last weekend in September, but as it turns out, Mark never told us this, but as it turns out, it's his anniversary. So, so finally he came clean. He's like, we need to move this date. So we've moved it to the first week in October, and October is huge for MPI because we have that seminar, which we literally call that Super Bowl weekend. I mean, that is such a huge. There will literally be 300 people in that room. It'll be amazing. Then we'll do. We turn around. We have myself, Tom Michaud, and Gary Gray coming for a seminar, which a lot of the younger generations aren't that familiar with Gary Gray, but to get him in this setting, I mean, I don't have words to describe how important that is. So that'll be another huge seminar that is coming up. That is the end of October. So October's huge for NPI. So
my mind was blown when we get to sit down with Gary Gray. I mean, the little nuances. And
the father of function.
He's the guy. I mean, he is the guy. So we're obviously giant homers. We hope this doesn't sound like too much of a commercial for MPI, but we're really not boastful or we're not hiding anything. It's in our core four for a reason, Brett. It's what we do every single day here. It's kind of the foundation of what we built our livelihood off of. And so we hope you guys will give it a chance. And man, if you're at Adjustathon and you listen to this podcast, come say hi to Brett and I. Pete, are you going to be there?
I'll be there.
Nice, Nate.
Absolutely.
Yeah, all four of us. So all these ugly mugs together. So come say hi. Come ask us questions. We love knowing if we're touching people with this podcast. With analytics, we really don't know what our reach is. We know it's big because people keep coming up to us, but we want to know who you are if you're listening to it, and we want to know what you're struggling with and what we can help you with, and hopefully maybe have some podcasts in the future that'll kind of answer some of those questions. So that at the end of the day is what we're trying to do with this podcast. There's, we've got some awesome sponsors that pay us a little bit of money that help pay for some wine, but other than that, we're literally just doing this.
We got a big week coming up, so stay tuned. We got some really big good ones coming up.
Absolutely. So anyway, guys, we'll put links to the Adjustathon and then also the GATE seminar in the below, whatever you call that thing, the info below. But otherwise, we hope you guys are having a great day and keep crushing patients. Talk to you guys soon. I hope you enjoyed this episode of the Gestalt Education Show. If you liked it, share it, subscribe to it, send it to your friends, send it to someone that needs to hear this message. We really want everyone to be able to tune in and get the best clinical advice that they can, which we're hoping that we're giving to you with these special guests. So if you have any questions, please feel free to reach out to us, or if you have any suggestions on upcoming conversations, let us know. For a list of our upcoming courses, we're adding them all the dang time. So go to gestaltedu.com, click on courses, and they'll all be right there for you. All right, have a good day.